After spending over $200,000 on custom parts just to bring Marcus Rashford's Mansory Rolls-Royce back to life, Matt Armstrong has reached a decision he never expected to make. He's selling it. And that decision says far more than it seems on the surface. This isn't just any Rolls-Royce. It's a Mansory-built Rolls-Royce, a car that exists at the extreme edge of luxury and excess. Originally owned by one of the most recognizable footballers on the planet, this wasn't meant to be a normal rebuild. From the moment Matt bought it, the project carried a weight most cars never do. Mansory cars live at the edge of taste, cost, and practicality. They exist to be extreme. Every panel is bespoke. Every surface is altered. Every decision prioritizes presence over simplicity. When Matt took this car on, he knew it wouldn't be easy. But what no one really talks about with Mansory builds is how fragile that extremity can be once the car is damaged. Nothing lines up the way a factory car does. Nothing can be replaced casually. Nothing is guaranteed to fit the way it should. As the rebuild progressed, small issues stacked on top of big ones, carbon panels that didn't sit perfectly, custom parts that couldn't simply be reordered, compromises that existed long before the crash ever happened, now amplified by repair work. Eventually, the car reached a point where it was technically complete. It drove, it worked, it looked outrageous, but it never felt settled. Every drive felt like a reminder that this wasn't a normal Rolls-Royce. It demanded attention, it demanded care, it demanded energy, and over time, that demand became heavy. Not because the car was failing, but because it never stopped asking. And that's when Matt realized something important. Keeping the Rolls wasn't about passion anymore. It was about responsibility. Selling it wasn't giving up. It was moving on. But even selling a Mansory Rolls-Royce isn't simple. The buyer pool is tiny. The car is polarizing. Add in its history, and suddenly the car exists in a strange place. Valuable, functional, famous, and yet waiting. Waiting for the one person who wants exactly this version of excess. While that car waits, another story continues quietly in the background. The Ferrari. At first, the Ferrari seemed like the easier project. Finish the rebuild, prove it works, enjoy it. But modern Ferraris have a way of revealing their complexity slowly, almost deliberately. Nothing failed catastrophically. Nothing announced itself clearly. Instead, warning lights appeared. Systems behaved inconsistently. Problems surfaced only when the car was pushed. Hard braking, aggressive cornering, moments where everything should have been perfect. That's when the truth became impossible to ignore. This wasn't just a mechanical issue, it was digital. The Ferrari 296 isn't just a car, it's a network. Hybrid systems, stability control, braking logic, suspension behavior, all tied together through software Ferrari controls tightly. And Ferrari decides who gets access to that world. At first, there was limited communication. Vague guidance, polite distance, nothing firm, nothing promised. Then, quietly, the support stopped. No diagnostics, no system access, no reassurance. Once Ferrari realized this rebuild was happening independently, the door closed. From Ferrari's perspective, the reasoning is clear. Safety comes first. A mistake at high speed could be catastrophic. Liability follows closely behind. Ferrari doesn't want responsibility for cars they didn't repair. And finally, brand image. Ferrari sells perfection, and independent rebuilds don't fit that image. But beneath all of that lies something deeper. Control. Ferrari doesn't just sell a product, they control the ecosystem around it. Software permissions, system resets, hybrid authorizations. If Ferrari decides a car has reached the end of its supported life, that decision echoes through every digital layer of the vehicle. A Ferrari can physically exist and still be partially locked out of its own systems. That's the reality Matt was facing. For most people, this would be the end of the story. Walking away would be logical, sensible, financially responsible. But this project was never just about logic. Matt made a choice. If Ferrari wouldn't support the rebuild, the car would still be repaired properly. Not recklessly, not through shortcuts, but through understanding. That meant abandoning the idea of factory approval and focusing instead on factory intent. How the car was designed to behave, what the systems expected to see, where the signals flowed. Sourcing parts became its own challenge. Some components could still be ordered, others couldn't. The software question remains unanswered. It's suspended between failure and success. And that uncertainty is exactly what gives this story its weight. Because this isn't just about whether one Ferrari will turn on again. It's about ownership in a digital age. About who truly decides when a car's life is over. About whether skill, patience, and responsibility still matter outside official systems. Modern cars aren't just machines anymore. They're networks. They're permissions. They're access levels controlled by people who may never touch the vehicle again after it leaves the factory. And when something goes wrong, the assumption is simple. Stop, replace it, walk away. But this Ferrari didn't follow that script. And neither did Matt Armstrong. The traditional relationship between car and owner has fundamentally changed. Where once a title and a set of keys meant complete control, now there are invisible boundaries. Software locks that can't be picked with physical tools. Diagnostic protocols that require authorization from distant servers. Update permissions that remain forever tethered to the original manufacturer. This shift happened gradually, almost imperceptibly. First came anti-theft immobilizers. Reasonable, protective, welcomed. Then diagnostic computers that only dealers could access. Then encrypted communication between modules that rejected unauthorized replacements. Then software that checked not just what part you installed, but whether you had permission to install it. Each step made sense in isolation. Each one promised better security, improved performance, enhanced safety. But together, they built something unprecedented. Cars that could be owned on paper but controlled from elsewhere. Machines that answered to two masters, the person who bought them and the company that built them. And most owners never noticed. Because most cars never reach the edge of that invisible boundary. They stay within the approved paths. They get serviced at authorized centers. They follow the predetermined life cycle from showroom to salvage yard. The system works until it doesn't. Because systems rely on people giving up. They rely on the assumption that obstacles are too high, costs are too steep, complications are too severe. They rely on the calculation that most people will walk away rather than fight through uncertainty. Matt Armstrong didn't walk away, even when the logical choice was to part the car out and move on. Even when every professional would have understood that decision. Even when the financial sense pointed towards surrender. The car remained in the garage. The work continued. The documentation kept filming. Because this stopped being about profit or logic somewhere along the way. It became about principle. This project doesn't end with a press release or factory approval. It doesn't end with a green light from a corporate office. It ends when the car itself decides whether it's ready to accept a second life or reject it entirely. Because the future of independent repair doesn't get decided in boardrooms alone. It doesn't get written into law without precedent. It doesn't shift without people willing to test its boundaries. It gets decided by the people willing to keep going, even when they're told they shouldn't, even when the path forward isn't clear, even when success isn't guaranteed. The people who see potential where databases see scrap. The people who see challenges where systems see impossibilities. The people who believe that machines deserve second chances, and that owners deserve real ownership. This Ferrari isn't finished yet. Its final chapter remains unwritten. But regardless of how the software question resolves, the questions it raised won't disappear. They'll echo through every similar project, every salvage rebuild, every independent repair, every moment when someone has to choose between accepting restrictions and testing boundaries. And in those moments, they'll remember this Ferrari, this project, this choice to keep going. Because some stories matter not for their endings, but for their refusal to accept predetermined conclusions.